FPEA. Okay, so FPEA, the big Florida convention that we go to every year, at their Leader Summit, they do a lot of giveaways. And so the Thinking Tree did some giveaways last year, and we were really impressed. They do a lot of journal type of things and just really creative books and such. And so we reached out to them, and they gave over $600 of giveaways to us to give to you guys, and so we're pretty excited about that. And then we have some other sponsors and giveaways that we've got planned for you throughout the day. So we're going to go ahead and give one of those away right now. So this is just going to be a random drawing. So Sherry Beaver. Oh. Sherry Beaver Sky Zone. You have a Sky Zone, and I don't even know how much the Sky Zone was for.
I don't remember.
Yeah, I think it's for 6. Was that the one for 6 people, maybe? Or no, that was escape rooms.
No, that was escape rooms.
Yeah. Okay. So we have escape rooms coming today too.
But if you open the envelope, you might actually be able to see what it says.
Yeah. Let us all know.
Because we have no idea.
Yeah. We didn't do that part. So. Okay. So this morning, we're starting out with, we're doing this in a different way. It's not just going to be a speaker getting up and speaking to you for an hour. It's not going to be, like I said, about the practicals, although we are going to have some of that today. But it's going to be, more short sessions of our counselors and some others giving their heart and what they've done and their thoughts on things. So this morning, we're pretty excited to have Kaboa McCarver, and many of y'all in the area know her. She's a big part of Jackson Homeschoolers. Been a homeschool mom in this area for a long time. I've known Kaboa since before her first child was born. And we're old. And so, last night they were asking, who in the room has homeschooled over this many years, and who in the room has homeschooled over that many years? And I found myself raising my hand for 18 years and going, something is not right here. So this is not cool. We've talked about how some of us who were the young schoolers are now becoming kind of the veteran homeschoolers, and that's just a lot to...
When did that happen?
Yeah, I don't like that.
That's not all right.
Because we still don't know it all. There's still so much every day. Last night, Stacy Pittman was talking about how fear really just keeps us so bound up, fear from being able to move forward and know that we're doing the right thing, fear that, your child's going to turn out okay, or not turn out okay, and just leaving it up to God. And so, so we've been around, a long time. Kaboa, she has a pretty big impact on the community. She would say she doesn't. But a lot of people know her, and we're really glad that she agreed to share some of her wisdom and knowledge that she's learned over the years, and things to encourage you guys. And then, of course, April Parkerson is... April and David are the founders of Home Life Academy, and April is our event planner and also our marketing person, and she also deals with our global development stuff too, so with our international families and such. But we'd just like to welcome them. If you give them a round of applause, they'll get started for you.
Like Angela was saying, today's going to be very, very different. The vision that I had for this was kind of like a TED Talks meets like a one of those women's Bible conferences or something like that, So it really, what I hope at the end of the day is that you walk away refreshed and renewed. But also, if you came in with an agenda, that the agenda just completely goes out the window. Because, I feel like a lot of what's happened over the past 5 or 6 years is that we go to these conferences and you see the mom walking in, right? And she's got her list of all the workshops she's going to go to and all the speakers that she wants to hear from and all the vendors that she wants to make sure that she touches all that curriculum, and everything like that. And that's not wrong and that's not bad, but it's missing a very key element to everything. So I hope that if you did come with an agenda and you were hoping to get that one question answered, I hope that you get questions answered today that you didn't even know that you had. You're going to be hearing from a lot of different women today. We were going to have a man too, but unfortunately he's broken down in Pennsylvania. Kenneth, Kaboa's husband, was going to come today too, and he broke down in his truck on his way home from a delivery work. So hopefully he's seeing us. Hi, Kenneth! And we're live streaming, by the way, and we're just telling Kaboa that we're live streaming into this room, right? That's right. Yep.
This feels like a lot of evidence to me. You know, like 4 recording devices feels like someone is recording this for a reason.
Are you on?
I don't know.
Yep.
Okay. All right.
But you're going to hear, excuse me, you're going to hear from a lot of different women today. You're going to hear from a mom whose sons both went into the military and served our country. You're going to hear from another mom whose daughter is a stay-at-home mom. You're going to hear from a mom whose son is about to finish his first year of college. You're going to hear from a mom whose son is about to finish his first year of high school, and she's panicking. You're going to hear from a mom who's graduated all 6 of her kids who have different walks of life. You're going to hear from a mom who's had a student with learning disabilities. You're going to hear from a mom whose sons went to military academy and have top secret government jobs. And you're going to hear from a mom whose son is an assistant manager at a gym. And what's the neatest thing about any of those moms that you're going to hear from? Oh, wait, I forgot one. You're going to hear from a mom whose kid is in an Ivy League school. What's neat and what's interesting and what's amazing about homeschooling is that none of those moms, the way that they homeschooled, is better than the other. They're each one individualized, and they're each one fantastic, and they're each one exactly what that student needed. So this is Kaboa, and she's my friend. And so we're just up here talking.
Yeah.
We're just talking.
So when April asked me to do this, or she first told Kenneth, that was kind of like a warning. And Kenneth said, well, what's your backup plan? Because Kaboa's going to say no. And then Kenneth came home and said, April wants to do this little talk thing. I said, well, you told her no, right? And he said, yeah, I told her no. And so then I just put April off. And I put her off, and I thought, well, they'll find somebody. You know, they know a lot of people. And she kept asking, and we had a conversation, and in the conversation, my intention was to tell her, I'm really sorry, I'm busy, it's inconvenient. Dog has to go to the wash that day, you know, something. But then when she told me what the point of this conference was and the point of this meeting was, I thought, you know, that really hits home with me, because I know that it was those conversations, it was those moments of understanding that truth about why we're doing what we're doing that altered and shaped the course of our homeschool. And I see it all the time. I see questions that are being asked that are good questions. They're relevant questions that need to be answered, but they're not the questions that need to be asked first. And so today I hope that I can share a little bit of my heart. You know, I don't feel like I have, Kenneth said, you know, I don't really know why they would want us to speak. It's not like we have a message that we have been burdened to spread. You know, it's not like we have something innovative or wonderful to share, anything new. You know, we don't have a product to sell. That would be even easier, you know. But I think the message and the heart of why we started homeschooling, why we continue to homeschool, gets blurred in the day-to-day of, you know, what math curriculum to use, you know, and my child's not reading, how do I deal with that? And those are relevant questions, but those answers don't get you through graduation. So that's how she kind of convinced me, is this is a conversation that hasn't been had a lot, and we'd like for you to be part of it. So then I said, okay.
All right. So the question that I think is on everyone's mind is, how did you get Alex into Brown?
You know, I get that question a lot, and I tell people, if that was our intention, we wouldn't have accomplished it. It was never a goal to get our kid into an Ivy League school. Our goal, so first of all, that's the wrong question. don't ask that question. The question should be, I don't know what the question should be, but the answer to that is we never tried. Our goal all along was to have a fantastic journey with our kids, for them to have a childhood that was memorable, and for me to have a grown adult man that I liked, that I wanted to be around, and that wanted to be around me, because that's not easy. And when they're 2 and 3, you think it's going to be like that forever, and that's just not true. They get to a point where they can choose. They choose their friends, and I wanted to be named among one of their friends, and I wanted to be around them. And so I asked Alex, I said, what should I share today? What is significant? What was the most important thing about your homeschool journey that you want these moms to know? And he said, the best thing about homeschooling, or the most important thing about homeschooling, was what we did outside of home. And with Alex in particular, we did a lot of traveling. We traveled all over the United States for business, but in the interim, between the little business stops, we stopped at, historical sites, and we talked about the significant roads, and we did a lot of traveling with Alex. And then we gave our kids and we try to still give our kids a lot of experiences. And so while the academic is important, I think the fact that he had a lot of real life experiences that you wait until you become an adult to be prepared for. McCarvers are hardly ever prepared for anything. We just do it, and we land where we land, because it's not about what you accomplish, it's about what you learn along the way for us. And so we're hardly ever prepared for life. Life happens, and then we respond to it. And and isn't that what we do as adults? It's not about, we can't control what happens to us, but we can certainly control how we respond to our circumstances. And while the kids are under our tutelage, and while they're in our home, and while they're young enough to shape and mold, have these experiences and teach them how to deal with disappointment and fear and shyness and whatever it is that their little thing might be. And so while I appreciate why moms ask me that, I do want to stress that, that's not a worthy goal. It's not a worthy goal to try to get your kid into an Ivy League college. The worthy goal is to have a child that you like, and in the process, other people will too.
So you didn't have a special math curriculum that you chose?
I do get a lot of questions about curriculum too. And when I started out all shiny and fresh and new, I wanted to be like Phyllis and Phyllis. And I was going to do the 5 on the road, and we were going to do projects, and we were going to build things, and I was going to be hands-on mom, and those fun curriculums that came in boxes and not books. And so that was how I was going to be. And then the boxes came, and I'm like, man, there's parts and instructions, and I have to keep up with all these pieces, and I have to go buy glue, So I realized pretty early on that for my family, it was not so much about my child's learning style as it was about my teaching style. And my teaching style was not, we're going to go out and back and build a fort. No, I'm going to send them with a box of with a box of nails and a hammer, and go build that fort and don't bleed in the process. So curriculum, when I did the research for curriculum, that was 10 years ago, and a lot of that is not even used. And I hear about all these wonderful new curriculums. I'm like, that's great, but I'm sticking to what works for us, because, again, more important than my children's learning style was my teaching style. And I would buy what I consider expensive curriculum, a $300 package of something, and it was the best reviewed, and everybody was using it, and everybody was loving it, and their kids were like brilliant. And so that's what we needed to use. And it would sit on the shelf and make me feel guilty, because number one, it was intimidating. There was so much to it. And number two, what if we used it and my kids weren't brilliant? What if we didn't know all the ancient philosophers by name when we were done with that? And so curriculum, I think it's important to have something you're going to use. And I was totally judgy when we started. I was like, I'm not using Abeka. That is for people who have no creativity, and I'm not following their rules. And now we use a lot of Abeka. But we don't use it the way Abeka intends for you to use it. We read through the material, so that they have a foundation, so that they have something familiar to bounce off of. And we may spend 6 months in Rome because they read something interesting. But eventually we read through the Becca books, and then they go back on the shelf for the next kid. And I think Reagan might still be president in one of my history books. But, again, the content to me has never been that important. It's been more about, are we learning? Are we growing? Are we enjoying this? Are my kids going to look back and go, that was miserable? I hate math because it was painful and it was torturous and 100 problems, or are they going to go, oh, math is fun and math is easy? And that was more our heart and our goal. And so while I know that curriculum is important, I know that it's good to have good curriculum, I also encourage moms to pick something that you like and pick something that you want to teach, because it can be the best curriculum ever, and if it doesn't work for your family, it doesn't work for your family. I taught all 5 of my kids how to read out of a $10 book,
Actually, I think what you did was you taught the first 4.
3.
3.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you were
We're
just
gonna
kind
be
of hoping
honest.
that the other 2 would just either not learn how to read because you don't have to do it, or
Well, and that was one of the things that I learned pretty early is don't worry about the things they're going to learn anyway. Like, don't teach your kids colors and numbers. They're going to learn that. By the time they're 5 and 6, they're going to learn that. If you have to teach them something, if I'm going to sit down and teach you something, I want it to be really something you're not going to learn unless I teach you. And so by the 4th one and the 5th one, I kind of figured, they're going to learn how to read. We live in a really literate society, and the older ones know how to read, and they know all their letters and all the letter sounds. And so I did do a little bit of formal instruction with the younger ones, but I really can't take all the credit for that because they're going to learn it anyway. I don't have to teach you what a circle is. You're going to figure that out. We don't have to do a coloring sheet on it. Now, if your kids like to do that, there's nothing wrong with doing that. And certainly if you enjoy that, and if it's an occasion for you to spend time with your child and it's enjoyable, then that's valuable. But for me, it was like circle, square, done, So we moved on to other things like wash these dishes because you're not going to have lunch until you do.
and this dish is a circle.
Exactly. There you go.
So in case you don't know, Kaboa has 5 boys. And so her oldest is Alex, who is at Brown University, and her next oldest is Zach. And I'm listening to Kaboa say all these little pearls of wisdom, and I look down, honey, I love you.
Oh,
She's got a horsehair
yes.
on her leg, and which is great. So for a long time, Kaboa had this very interesting philosophy about pets and about animals or houseplants or anything that was not a human.
Mm-hmm.
And how many horses do you have now?
Well, currently there are 5 on the property.
Yep. And what was your philosophy about animals and plants and
Well,
things?
everything in life, outside of humans, if it's not edible, it's not worth my time. Right? So if I'm going to feed you and clean up after you, you eventually need to be able to feed and clean up after me. And otherwise, I need to be able to eat you, so, right?
Right. So why do you have 5 horses?
I have 5 horses because my second child, and he knows this, is my most difficult child. He was, at one point in his childhood, I looked at him and I could honestly say, I love you because I'm your mom, but I don't really like you. And he knows this, I don't like you, I don't like your character, you're a brat, you're demanding, you're inconsiderate and selfish, and I don't like you. And he was very young. It was very obvious, very young, that he had this personality and this thing about him that made my life hard. And because it made my life hard, I didn't really want to be around him. And it was really easy to just dismiss him and send him off. And when the Lord, when I was able to say that and admit that honestly, and the Lord was able to kind of shake me and go, you kind of choose that. He is who he is. And if you don't like that, yours, Mom. I gave him to you. So what are you going to do about that? So we knew very early on that he was going to be difficult. And I knew that how I handled that was going to shape the rest of his life. So his parenting has been very deliberate. His parenting is harder than all the others. And his parenting requires horses. Because at 2 and at 3, he needed, and I know God gave this to him. God gave him the ability and the desire, and hopefully someday the talent to control and to lead and to dominate. And Zach has to have dominion, you know. For some men, their dominion doesn't have to be big. You know, my husband's dominion is me and our 14 little acres and the kids, and he's satisfied in his soul with that. For Zach, his dominion is everything and everyone around him. And so
Within a 5-mile radius.
exactly. So if he's not if he's not in charge of something, you know, everyone's going to know it, and he's on his way to be in charge of it. And we were offered a free horse, no such thing, by the way, a free horse, and we thought, okay, great, you know, we'll throw this in the backyard, and he'll ride around, and then that'll be, you know, because at some point in every little kid's life, they want to own a horse, or they want to pet a horse. And the free horse, the Lord opened up the door, or maybe created the door, right at the right moment. The horse came into our life right at the moment Zach wanted a horse. And all the circumstances fell right into place to where we could own a horse. We are a one-income, 7 people in our family. That is not a family that can sustain a horse. And now we have 5. And but the Lord opened that door because he knew that I needed to save. I was tasked with saving this child from himself and being able to channel all this power and wonderful stuff that he put in there that was so troublesome to me. And so in the course of learning how to ride horses and learning how to train horses, he could channel and he could demand and he can make this 1,200-pound animal not move a muscle until he says, "You're free to move." And he can make this 1,200-pound animal run and trot and walk and move as long as he said, "It's time to move." And so in the course of learning how to train these horses, he is learning how to negotiate, and he is learning patience beyond anything that I ever imagined this child would be capable of. And I'm seeing what God has put in him being put to use and being molded and being shaped. And so horses are not cheap. They're extremely expensive, as a matter of fact. And all these horse owners are like, yes, I know. And it's not
hair all over.
Yes, and they leave hair all over the place. And it's not something that a one-income, you know, family with 7 people should be able to afford. But God has flung door after door after door open for us because he knows that I need this for Zach and that Zach needs this, you know, to not go to jail. And, you know, that desperate plea of the mom, God help me because I don't know what to do. Horses have been the answer for me and for Zach. And so if you like Zach, you're welcome. Come muck stalls at my house.
Real quick, Angela, what time is it? What exact time is it? Huh? 9:45. Okay. I'm going to ask Kaboa just a couple more questions. But part of today, and the reason why you guys are sitting at round tables is because for the last 10 minutes of every hour before the next session starts, I wanted you guys to be able to have some conversations sitting at the tables with each other. We've got home life staff and counselors that can answer questions. I think at almost every single table, we can spread some people around too if we need to. But if you guys have those questions, you want to just discuss a little bit more in depth of what you've seen on stage today, that's what we're wanting to happen. We want lots of conversations to happen today. So, Kaboa,
Yes.
I'm trying to think of another question to ask you. Any other pearls of wisdom?
When I asked Zach what the most important thing that he thought that the moms needed to know was about his homeschooling journey, he said, I really appreciate, academically and in my life and everything, he said, I think the most important things that homeschooling moms need to instill in their kids is character and learning how to learn. So it's not so much about what you're learning as much as it is having the confidence and the resources to be able to find what it is you don't know. When we started homeschooling, one of the big questions for us, remember this, Diana, is what about the gaps in their education? What about the gaps and the holes? And so I thought a lot about that, and I prayed a lot about that, and I accepted that there are going to be gaps. There are going to be huge gaps. There's going to be gaps all over the place. But I could have sent them anywhere and done anything with them academically, and there would have been gaps. And so how do you cover those gaps? They're going to be there. And the answer to that is if your child knows how to learn, they can fill in the gaps when they need to. So don't worry about the gaps. They're going to be there. Accept them, embrace them, dive into them. So yes, character and learning how to learn. And I go back to character because, like with Zach, if you've got a child that you're like, I don't know that I really like you, you have to evaluate why, and you have to figure out how much of that is actually honestly you, because at that point in my life, I was probably pregnant, probably nursing, had the toddler, and then him, or maybe he was the toddler, and maybe a preschooler, and trying to start my homeschool journey. And at that point in my life, I really didn't like me. I didn't really like how snappy and short I was, and how demanding and maybe even uncontrollable I was at that point. So much of their character is reflected in those that they idolize, which are the parents that they're around. Now I say that only up to a certain point, because after they're like 16, they're on their own. Because you can only instill and shape and mold that for so long, and then they have the same Holy Spirit of God as you do. And free yourself. For some people, it's at 13. For some people, it's at 17. I'm thankful that for us, it was a little later. But free yourself when they hit that point where they have the same Holy Spirit of God that indwells in them and moves them, that dwells in you. You're free of that. They can choose. And the choices that they make, yes, while they were shaped by you, they are independent of you. And so when your child is 17 and being a jerk, he's a jerk. He's your jerk, but he's a jerk. And accept that and be okay with that. And know that the Lord will get a hold of him just like he does with you. But when they're little bitty, definitely evaluate your relationship with them. Evaluate your relationship with your spouse. And evaluate your relationship with the Lord. And then I also know that people deal with circumstances that Kenneth and I didn't have to deal with. I have a wonderful husband that, although he didn't start off being extremely supportive with the homeschool thing, he was willing. And in the course of me educating myself about the benefits of homeschooling, I educated him. And he's now fully on board and totally passionate about it. And he's even said that if something were to ever happen to me, he'd want a woman who would finish homeschooling. So that's pretty on board.
Well, that's great. All right. Well, Kaboa,
Yes.
I'm so glad that you had the opportunity to come sit with me on this couch and just talk to me. You weren't talking to anybody else.
Absolutely.
Right? What? Does anybody have any questions for Kaboa?
Kenneth wanted to share, kind of that last bit about relationships and about, for us, one of the things I wanted to ask all of you, though, is you really need to answer for yourself, why am I homeschooling? Mm-hmm. Because in those moments when you want to quit, and in those moments when you want to put the kid on the yellow bus, you got to go back to, why am I homeschooling? And I'm going to answer that, and then that's kind of what Kenneth wanted to share. We chose to homeschool because we wanted to raise men. At the time, we didn't know it would be all men, but we wanted to raise children who would grow up and be useful to the Lord. We didn't want them to lack skills that we should have taught them. We knew that these were souls that were given to us to care for. And that's how I think about it, about parenting, is that, yes, it's my child, but it's not really mine. God has tasked me with the responsibility of caring for this child, shaping him and growing him into a fully grown man and soul that God has a purpose for. And so what do I need to do as the caregiver or the babysitter of this child so that he's useful to the Lord? And only a very small part of that is academics, you know? The cake is the man that he's going to be and how the Lord is going to use him. And then the icing is the knowing how to read and knowing how to write and knowing how to do arithmetic. That's the icing. The cake is a likable human being that is capable of doing whatever the Lord may call him to do. So that's kind of what Kenneth wanted to share, I think, I hope.
Kenneth, if you're watching, is that what you wanted her to share?
Yeah.
Anybody else have any questions? All right. Well, like I said, Kaboa, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. And just talk amongst yourselves.